The man did not shout when he entered the hospital ward, and that was what scared her the most, because people who plan to hurt others do not always raise their voice first. They often stay quiet and walk with purpose. And when Jenna Langley looked up from the medication tray and saw his eyes, she knew this night would not end like the others, and someone would leave changed forever. Let me take you back to where it all began, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to Jenna's Velvet Tales. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe. Every subscription helps us share more emotional stories about the deep bonds between humans and animals. If this kind of story touches you, your support truly means a lot. Feel free to say where you are watching from, and do not forget to explore more beautiful stories here on the channel. Now back to the story. Jenna Langley had learned how to stay small long before she ever put on scrubs. She learned it in places where being seen meant being shot and being loud meant someone did not come home, and although those places were far away now, they still lived inside her hands, inside the way she stood near doors, inside the way her eyes always counted people without meaning to. On that night, she was doing what she always did, moving slow, checking names, giving medicine, listening more than she spoke, and avoiding attention because attention had never brought her anything good. The hospital staff barely noticed her, and that was fine because she was not there to be noticed. She was there to make it through another night without remembering too much. She had just finished helping an older man drink water when the elevator opened and a stranger stepped out, not lost, not rushed, not angry, just steady. And when his shoes touched the floor, Jenna felt something tighten in her chest, because he did not look like a visitor. He looked like someone who had already decided what he was going to do, and as he walked past her, she caught the smell of rain and old grief on him, and she turned her head just enough to follow his path without making it obvious, and she told herself to stay calm, because staying calm was what kept people alive in the past and might keep them alive now. The man stopped near the nurse's station and looked down the hall toward the patient rooms, and when his eyes settled on room 408, Jenna knew that was where this night would break open, because that room held June Cardenas, and June Cardenas had not spoken in months, and people who come to see silence often bring their pain with them. Jenna picked up her tray and followed at a distance, and she did not call for help yet because she needed to understand what kind of broken she was dealing with. And as she reached the door, she heard his voice low and shaking as he spoke to someone who could not answer, and he said, "I told you I would not let them decide for you." And that was when Jenna stepped inside and said softly, "Sir, you are not supposed to be here this late." And he turned to look at her, and for a moment neither of them moved, and in that moment two lives that had been held together by habit and loss quietly collided, and neither of them knew yet that this was the night the quiet nurse would be seen, and the grieving man would be stopped, not by force but by something far harder, to face the truth of what he was about to do. Jenna kept her hands low, not showing fear, not showing strength, just steady, because she had learned long ago that sometimes the smallest movement can change everything. And right now this man, standing at the foot of the coma patient's bed, was trying to hold in more pain than his body could carry. He had placed white roses near the woman's hands, and the way he stared at her face told Jenna this was not his first time in this room, but it might be his last. He looked over at Jenna again and spoke like someone who had already made peace with a bad decision, and he said she hated flowers. Unless they were still growing, she would have called these a waste. And he gave a small laugh, but it didn't sound like a laugh, it sounded like a man running out of air. Jenna nodded, but said nothing at first. She studied his stance, the way his foot hovered near the metal stand, the way his right hand never left his jacket pocket, and she said, "What's your name, sir?" He answered, "Ben," and then added, "June's my wife. I told her not to go through with the surgery. They said it was routine, but I knew better. I just knew, and now look at her. They kept saying she might come back, but look at her. She's not here anymore." Jenna glanced at June. The woman was barely breathing. Her chest moved like paper floating on water, soft and shallow and fading. Jenna said, "I'm sorry," and she meant it. She always meant it, because she knew what it was like to watch someone slip away slowly with no warning. Ben nodded, then looked down, then pulled something from his pocket, not a weapon, not loud, not sharp, just a small silver tool, a valve key. And if you have ever worked in a hospital, you know exactly what that means. And if you haven't, just know this: it's small, but it can stop oxygen. And in that moment, Jenna knew this man had not come here to cause chaos. He had come here to make something stop. Jenna's voice didn't rise, didn't waver. She just said, "That's not how we say goodbye." Ben turned toward her slowly, his eyes full of tired anger and grief. He said, "I'm not saying goodbye, I'm making it fair. She wouldn't want this, not like this. They told me she might wake up, but they're just keeping her here for the money. She had a DNR, but they lost the paperwork, and now she's stuck here like she's still a person." Jenna stepped closer, just one slow step, and said, "Ben, I've seen what it looks like when someone truly wants to go, and I've seen what it looks like when they're not ready, and I've also seen what it does to the ones left behind when they try to play God and get it wrong." Ben's grip tightened on the tool. She could see his knuckles shaking, but she stayed calm, just like she was taught in places where decisions were made with seconds, not meetings. And she said, "I had a brother. He was younger than me. His name was Ryan. He died in Kandahar. We were both medics. I made it back. He didn't. He bled out in my lap, and I've replayed that night in my head more times than I can count, not because I could have saved him, but because a part of me still Thinks maybe I missed something, maybe if I'd moved faster, maybe if I'd looked left instead of right, maybe, but here's the truth, even if I could have done it differently the outcome might have been the same, and now I carry him with me everywhere I go, not the way he died, but the way he smiled the morning before. Ben was listening now, not just hearing but really listening, and she saw his shoulders drop just slightly. He said they promised she'd walk out of here. They made it sound like she was lucky to get the surgery. Now I come in every week and nothing changes. They gave me a binder of numbers and terms and goals, but no one tells me if she's still in there or not. Jenna stepped beside him now and very gently laid her hand on the edge of the bed right near June's wrist and said, "You know, I've been working this shift for 6 years, and I've seen patients wake up after 6 days, and I've seen them pass after 6 months, and I've seen families fall apart waiting, and some who found their peace, and I can't promise you anything, not about June, not about tomorrow, but I can tell you this: no one deserves to be remembered for the way they looked in a hospital bed. They deserve to be remembered for how they loved and how they laughed and for every reason you stayed with her, even now." Ben looked down at the valve key again, and his hand slowly lowered. He placed it on the nightstand without a word and took a step back from the bed, and Jenna knew this moment would stay with him for the rest of his life. Not because he almost made a terrible mistake, but because he didn't, and sometimes the hardest thing is doing nothing when everything in your chest is screaming to do something. She said, "Thank you for listening," and he said, "Thank you for not calling security," and she said, "Not yet," and they shared a small tired smile just as a security guard stepped in, quiet, slow, not aggressive, just doing his job, and Jenna gave a small nod to say it's all right, and Ben didn't resist. He walked out on his own, hands behind his back but head held in a way that said maybe this wasn't the end, maybe, just maybe, this was something else beginning. And when it was all done, Jenna sat down beside June's bed just for a moment, not because she had to but because she wanted to, and she whispered, "You have someone who still believes you're in there, don't waste that." Later that morning, as the sky started turning soft and pink, Jenna went outside behind the hospital to a small, forgotten patch of dirt near the wall, and she planted a few white roses. No one watched her, no one helped, and that was okay because she wasn't doing it for anyone else, and she didn't write her name on the little tag. She just wrote June in careful small letters, because sometimes healing isn't loud and love isn't flowers in a jar. Sometimes it's a nurse with a limp planting something that might bloom. 3 days later, a letter showed up in her locker. No name, no return address, just a single photo, a little girl holding a teddy bear standing next to June's hospital bed, behind them a small window, and in that window white roses just starting to bloom, and written in messy black marker on the back of the photo were 7 words that made Jenna sit down without meaning to: "Thank you for giving my dad back." Jenna held the photo like it was made of glass, not because it was fragile, but because something about it felt heavier than it looked, and she turned it over again, reading the words slowly like they might change the second time around. "Thank you for giving my dad back." The handwriting was uneven, probably a child, maybe 7, maybe 8, and she traced the ink with her finger quietly, trying to imagine the moment this photo was taken. Someone had been there in the room with June, maybe a nurse, maybe the girl's mother, maybe Ben himself, and the fact that June was sitting up in the bed, not awake exactly but propped up, meant someone had taken time to make that day matter, and Jenna had not asked for anything in return. She never did, but this one small photo, this one small message had done something she wasn't ready for. It made her feel seen, not in a big loud way, just quietly, in the way that matters most, like someone had watched her do the hard thing and remembered. She sat for a while just holding it, until the sound of the morning shift nurses filled the hallway again, people laughing, footsteps, doors opening, machines coming to life. The world moved on. Jenna placed the photo back in her locker behind the packet of old tissues and the worn sticky note that said "drink water" in her own handwriting, and then she closed the door and took a long deep breath that felt like it belonged to someone else. It was the kind of breath you take when you're about to start again, when the past is still there but it's not crushing you like it used to. She didn't tell anyone about the letter, not the head nurse, not Tina, the student nurse, not even the older janitor, who always brought her a cup of tea when he had extra. She just carried it like she carried everything else, quietly. 2 days passed, then 3, nothing unusual, until the 4th night, when the same elevator that had brought Ben quietly into the ward opened again at just past 2 in the morning. The floor was quiet, lights dimmed, most of the patients asleep, and Jenna was restocking supplies in the hallway. She heard the sound of shoes stepping out, slow, careful, not rushed, and when she turned she saw a man she didn't recognize, not a visitor, not a doctor. His jacket was too thick for the weather, his eyes too alert, and she didn't know why, but something in her chest whispered, "Watch him," and she did, without speaking, without moving. She just listened to the sound of his steps and the silence he left behind, because some people carry noise with them, and others carry the kind of quiet that should make you nervous. This man was the second kind. He walked past her without making eye contact, but his hand brushed something in his jacket, and she saw the shape of it, hard, sharp, long, like something that didn't belong in a hospital, and that's when her body remembered what it was to be ready again, not scared, just aware, and she didn't panic. She just reached for her phone and texted the front desk calmly and said, "Visitor on 4B, please confirm ID." Then she kept walking like nothing was wrong and waited for what came next. 5 minutes later, she heard the shouting down the hall, a nurse screaming, someone yelling, "Get on the floor now," and everything broke at once. Patients crying, people running, the sound of something slamming against a wall, and then the man's voice louder than before, "Where is he? Bring him out now." And Jenna knew whoever he was looking for wasn't a patient this time, he was here for someone else. She moved fast. Not with fear but with training. She grabbed Tina from the hallway and pulled her into the supply room, locking the door with the metal bar, and whispering, "Stay down, don't make a sound." Tina's hands were shaking, her breath short. She said, "What's happening?" And Jenna didn't lie, she just said, "Someone's hurt, and they don't know how to handle it." And that was true, more true than Tina could know. Then Jenna crouched near the corner, where she kept the emergency kit. She pulled out scissors, gauze, a flashlight, and a roll of bandage tape, and she didn't say it out loud, but she was preparing for something she thought she'd left behind. The door shook once, then silence again, and in that silence she remembered the moment years ago when her convoy was hit in Kandahar, how the dust had filled her mouth, how she had pressed gauze against a boy's neck while fire rolled over the edge of the truck, and how his last words weren't for his mother or his God, but for his dog back home whose name was Max. And that's when her eyes flicked toward the corner where Charlie, the therapy dog, usually slept, but tonight his bed was empty, and she whispered no under her breath and cracked the door just enough to see the hallway again. And there he was, the man, the intruder, holding something dark and heavy and yelling for someone named Keller, his voice echoing off the walls, "Bring me Dr. Keller now, or I swear I will start dropping people one by one." And Jenna knew in that second exactly what this was. Not a robbery, not a random attack, it was personal. Someone was being blamed, and the whole floor was caught in the middle. She turned back to Tina and said, "I need you to do something brave. Stay hidden no matter what. Don't move. Even if you hear shouting. Even if I don't come back right away." Tina shook her head. No, I can't stay here alone. Please come back. I'm scared." And Jenna placed both hands gently on her shoulders and said, "I will come back. I promise. I've done this before, but you need to trust me." And Tina nodded, eyes full of tears and fear and faith. And then Jenna stepped out into the hallway where the man was pacing, shouting more now, and her heart was steady, her legs moving slow and sure, because nobody knew yet, not even him, that the quiet nurse walking toward him had once been trained to keep people alive in a war zone, and tonight that training was going to save more than just the people on this floor. It was going to save the man holding the gun too. Jenna walked slowly toward the man, his grip tight around the weapon, his jaw clenched, his eyes wild but not empty, and she could tell right away he hadn't done this before. He held the gun like someone who wanted power but hated himself for needing it. And he shouted again, "I said, where is Dr. Keller? Where is he?" And this time the fear in his voice was louder than the anger, and Jenna stopped just close enough to see his face clearly and said calmly, "I don't know who Dr. Keller is, but I can help you if you let me talk to you." And the man pointed the gun at her now, his hands shaking, and he said, "Don't play dumb. I know he works here, Nathan Keller. He left my sister on that table to bleed out and walked away like she didn't matter. She was 27, and he never even said sorry. He just went back to his life, and now it's my turn to take something from him." And Jenna didn't flinch. She had been in this exact kind of moment before, not in a hospital, but on the edge of a destroyed village with a boy holding a grenade and eyes just like this, broken, angry, and full of love that had nowhere to go. And she said, "What was your sister's name?" And the man blinked confused and said, Rachel Cray. "She was my only family, and he ruined her." Jenna kept her voice low but strong and said, "My name is Jenna Langley. I'm a nurse, and I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know what happened to Rachel, and I don't know what Dr. Keller did or didn't do, but I do know that whatever happens tonight, whatever you do, this moment will stay with you forever, and it will either be the night you became the thing that hurt you or the night you chose something else, and that choice is still yours right now." And the man was breathing hard now, like each breath was scraping his throat, and he said, "He didn't even look at me at the funeral. He sent a card." And Jenna nodded slowly and said, "I'm sorry you didn't get to say goodbye the way you needed to, and I can't take that pain from you, but I can sit with you in it, and maybe that's enough for now. Maybe it doesn't have to be this." And she reached forward just enough to take one step closer, and he looked at her, then really looked, and he said, "You're not scared?" And she said, "I've been scared before. This isn't that." And he swallowed hard and lowered the gun just a little, just enough, and said, "Do you think people like us ever stop hurting?" And she said, "I don't know, but I think we learn how to carry it better when we stop carrying it alone." And she held out her hand, not fast, not dramatic, just honest and real, and said, "You can still choose right now." And for a long quiet second nothing happened. The hallway stood still, the lights buzzed softly somewhere, a machine beeped in a patient's room, and then slowly the man placed the gun on the floor and stepped back and covered his face with both hands and sobbed, the kind of sob that has waited years to come out. And Jenna stepped forward and stood beside him, not touching, not crowding, just being there, and that was enough. Security came quietly again, just like last time, and when they took him away he didn't fight, he didn't speak, he just looked back at Jenna and whispered, "Thank you," and she nodded because she knew it wasn't for saving him, it was for seeing him later that night after the floor was calm again, and the patients were safe. And Tina came out of the supply room with tears in her eyes and hugged Jenna like a child who had just been pulled from a burning house. Jenna sat outside on the bench near the Rose Garden and Charlie the therapy dog climbed up beside her and laid his head on her lap without being told, and she whispered, "You did good boy, real good," and she scratched behind his ear, and for a long time they just sat there watching the wind move the flowers, and then Jenna looked up at the sky and spoke out loud to no one in particular. She said, "I don't want medals, I don't want speeches, I just want people to walk out of here who weren't supposed to," and that night she didn't go home. She stayed until the sun came up and the birds began to move, and for the first time in a long time her chest didn't feel heavy, it just felt full. And when she went back inside, she found a single note tucked under her locker. It said in small careful writing, "You stopped a bullet without ever firing one, and that's more than most heroes can say." She folded the note and placed it inside her notebook next to her brother's name and sat down quietly on the floor, letting the morning light hit her face soft and warm like a beginning. At 7:15 that same morning, a call came through from the front desk, a new patient being transferred from emergency. A boy 8 years old, critical condition, lungs collapse, suspected abuse, unresponsive, and Jenna was the only one on shift who volunteered to take him in, not because she had extra time, but because something in her chest said this one matters, and she had no idea that by the end of that night, she would carry that boy through smoke and fire with one arm broken, and blood in her eyes, and every camera in the building watching, and still somehow no one would ever know what she really did. The boy arrived just after 7. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He didn't move. His name was Liam, and the only thing on his chart that gave Jenna pause more than the words "collapsed lung" was the note scribbled in the corner that said, "Possible abuse at home." He was 8 years old and weighed just under 60 pounds. A bruise along his ribs, a stitched-up cut across his scalp. His breath came like it was scared to disturb the air. Jenna stood beside the stretcher as they wheeled him into room 403, her hands steady, her voice calm, and her eyes already scanning for the things no one wrote down. And there it was, a handprint, half faded, across the boy's left shoulder. Small but sharp. Someone had gripped him too hard, too many times. Someone stronger than him. She didn't ask questions, not yet. There was a right time for everything, and right now, Liam needed air more than answers. The doctor, a young man trying too hard to sound like he wasn't nervous, gave her a rundown of the vitals and said the usual. "We'll monitor. Keep oxygen steady. No visitors unless cleared." Jenna nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll stay with him." The doctor didn't argue. No one ever argued with Jenna when she said it like that. She stayed beside Liam as they set up the monitor, cleaned his skin, and adjusted the mask over his mouth. His eyes didn't open, but his fingers twitched slightly when she brushed his knuckles with hers. A small, almost invisible sign, but to Jenna it was everything. It meant there was still someone in there. Someone trying to come back. Charlie padded into the room quietly, ears low, nose lifted toward the boy's bed. Jenna looked at him and said, "Not yet, buddy. Let him sleep." Charlie sat by the door instead, watching. At 9:13 a.m., a name was whispered near the hallway that made Jenna freeze. Dr. Nathan Keller. A name that hadn't been spoken since the hostage night 2 weeks ago. The one the gunman had asked for. The one who never came out of his office. He had taken leave after the incident, and now he was back. Jenna felt her shoulders tense, but she said nothing. She finished checking Liam's for, then walked into the hallway, just in time to see Keller step out of the elevator, adjusting his white coat like it didn't quite fit anymore. He looked thinner, paler. His eyes darted too much. But what made Jenna stop was the sight of a man trailing just behind him, trying to look like staff but walking like a shadow. Jacket zipped high, eyes forward, too quiet. Jenna's stomach dropped. She had seen that walk before, twice now, once with Ben, once with Silas, and now here again, wrapped in someone new. She didn't know his name, but she knew why he was here. Someone had been hurt, and he had decided Dr. Keller should pay for it. She walked back to Liam's room and locked the door, not out of panic, but out of preparation. She'd learned to listen to the small warnings her body gave. This was one of them. She looked at Charlie. He stared at the hallway, tail still, ears stiff. Jenna leaned over Liam, brushed his forehead with the back of her hand, and said softly, "You're going to hear things soon, loud things, but I need you to stay right here with me. Okay?" At 9:42 a.m., it happened. A scream from the hallway, then yelling, then the unmistakable command, "Nobody move!" And this time it wasn't quiet. This time, the sound filled every corner of the ward. Jenna stayed low, crouched by Liam's bed, watching the door, listening for steps. She heard running, slamming, voices, someone crying, and then silence. She opened the door an inch, enough to see the hallway. For staff members were on the floor, hands over their heads. A nurse was being pulled toward the nurse's station by the man in the zip jacket. He had a weapon, long, heavy, not standard. An AR-style rifle. Jenna's mind clicked into something calm. Something deep, not panic, just motion. She closed the door, pulled the sheet off Liam, and lifted him gently from the bed. He was light, so light it broke her heart. She slid him behind the base of the medicine cabinet, patted the edges with folded linens, and said, "Don't move, don't speak. You stay here until I come back." He looked at her, dazed but conscious now. She touched his cheek, smiled, and added, "You're brave. Okay? Brave boys get better." Then she stepped out. She walked the hallway like she belonged there, holding a tray of supplies like she didn't know what was going on, like she hadn't already studied every step, every sound, every escape. The man spotted her. "Hey, you, nurse, over here." She didn't blink. She stepped forward. "I was just checking the oxygen levels. You don't want a tank to blow." He narrowed his eyes. "What's your name?" Jenna met his gaze. "Langley. Jenna Langley." He paused. Something in him flickered. Recognition. Or maybe confusion. "You were here last time?" She nodded. "I'm always here." He pointed the rifle toward the break room and barked, "Go, now." She obeyed, but not because he told her to. She needed to be in that room. There was a hidden access panel behind the fridge. If she could get through it, she could reach the backup alarm system. And if she got that running, the lockdown could be overridden. Inside the room, she moved fast. Not frantic. Focused. She pulled the fridge aside, knelt down, pried the cover open. Wires. Fuses. Her hands moved by memory now. Back to dusty tents and blackout nights. She bypassed the security lock and activated the manual override. A red light blinked. Silent alarm sent. She exhaled. One step done. But behind her, the door opened. Heavy. Slow. The man stepped in, rifle raised. "You think I'm stupid?" Jenna turned. "No," she said. "I think you're hurting." He stared at her. "He killed her. My sister. You know that, right?" Keller left her bleeding. Didn't even try. Just walked out. His voice cracked. "I have nothing left." Jenna didn't move. "So you want to be what took her from you? You want to do the same thing?" He yelled, "You don't know what it's like." She stepped forward, just a little. "I do." He froze. She said, "I was in Kandahar. I've held bodies of people I loved. Watched them go, knowing I couldn't save them. You think I don't understand pain? Grief? Guilt?" He shook his head. "Then you should know this is the only way I'll sleep again." Jenna whispered, "Not if you do this. If you hurt more people, that weight, it never leaves you. Ever. You carry it for the rest of your life. And you already look tired." His eyes broke then, just crumbled, and the rifle dropped. She caught it before it hit the ground. Security burst in seconds later. Fast. Armed. Too late. Jenna handed them the rifle. "He's done. Don't hurt him." They nodded. Took him away. It was over. But it wasn't. Not yet. She ran back to room 403. And Liam, he wasn't breathing. She dropped beside him, tore open his shirt. No rise. No sound. No movement. "Stay with me," she whispered, pressing 2 fingers under his jaw. "Stay." And then she began chest compressions. And didn't stop. Not when staff entered. Not when alarms screamed. She kept going. "Come on, Liam. Come on." And then he coughed. Small. Wet. But alive. He opened his eyes. Just barely. And the only word he said was, "Charlie." The dog padded in, laid beside him, and Jenna, finally, let herself cry. That night, she sat outside again, holding the letter she found in her locker hours later. Just 7 words, written in that same shaky hand from before. You saved me. He never hit me again. And that was enough. For now. Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of the story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.